Okay, welcome to the Biologics Educational Webinar Series. Again, I'm Zheng Wang, today's host, working as the Vegetable Crops Farm Advisor for University of California Cooperative Extension in Stanislaus County, based in Modesto. Okay, we are very happy to have our today's speaker, Nick Young. Nick is a senior environmental scientist at the CDFA Fertilizing Materials Inspection Program. He also serves as the co-chair of the Biostimulant Committee for the Association of American Plant Food Control Officials. The mission of this organization is to standardize fertilizer regulations and other inputs, including crop biostimulants, for all 50 US states and Canada. So his topic for today's webinar is biostimulants from a regulatory perspective. Well, all right, Nick, thank you for coming, and I'll let you take over.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Zhang. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us today, and thanks for this great webinar series. I think for those of you who've been able to join the previous two, it seems like that there's been a lot of different avenues, different ways of looking at biostimulants, and that's pretty exciting. So thanks for joining us, and it's really great you guys are able to see a lot of different angles here. And of course, my angle is from a regulatory perspective as the dreaded regulator. So I'm going to tell you where it's at from a standpoint of California, hopefully provide, excuse me, some guidance from all states throughout the United States, and also touch on products that have dual use as well. So not just as a biostimulant for use related to fertilizers, but those that may be biocontrols related to pesticides. Now pesticides aren't my expertise, but some of these products do fall under that category. So let me go ahead and go to the next slide here. So I'm going to explain a little bit about myself and about our program. So I am with California Department of Food and Agriculture, specifically the Fertilizing Materials Inspection Program. And as a whole, what we do, we promote the safe and effective distribution of fertilizing materials essential for the production of food and fiber. And there's a lot of little incremental things that we do. We perform inspections throughout the state of California. And if it's an organic material, we actually perform them in border states ourselves, and we perform them throughout the United States and worldwide through a third party. We also perform sampling of products and analysis. We investigate complaints, review data and labeling claims, and provide assurances to growers about the quality and quantity of these products. So for myself, I've been with the program for 14 years now. And what I do, I oversee our field inspectors. So we are on the enforcement side, we are on the sampling side, we're on the education side. So we have a group composed of special investigators and environmental scientists who perform inspections, as I said, throughout California and border states. And from there, that's where we end up getting a lot of our data. We see what is being used on a daily basis. And of course, the increasing popularity of products that have ingredients that are considered to fall under this biostimulant category. So you may hear me talk about fertilizing materials and not just fertilizer. And that's because we actually regulate a number of product categories, and they're not all fertilizer. So we've classified them into commercial fertilizer, which is your traditional fertilizer for agriculture, for organic input materials, those specifically designed for organic food and crop production, agricultural minerals like gypsum, lime, some base ingredients like zinc sulfate. And then there's specialty fertilizers. That's more along the lines of the home and garden category. We regulate packaged soil amendments, but interestingly, we do not regulate bulk soil amendments unless they are stating that they're suitable for organic crop production. Then the last category is the one that we're going to focus on today, which in California, it's classified as auxiliary soil and plant substances. And that's where a lot of these specialty ingredients that would be considered biostimulants would fall. So in addition to the bulk soil amendments, we also do not regulate pesticides. So that would be the California Department of Pesticide Regulation that deals with those. So first off, before I tell you the state of regulation, because there may be a feeling that I might be a detractor towards biostimulants, which isn't the case. So I want people to know right up front, myself and other state regulators, whether California or other states, we understand biostimulants industry goals. We understand what they want. So an improved process for biostimulant products that will enable effective and efficient registration that to be able to review processes and benefit all stakeholders. So they want the ability to use the term biostimulant on labels and on marketing, that they can make related biostimulant claims. They want credibility for the industry and a clear, consistent, predictable process to market. This definitely does not exist, the predictability factor among state to state, and I will get into that. One label for all states, not that they have to have separate requirements for California, and then they go to another state that has totally different requirements. They want to ensure that it's safe, and then have a path for dual uses for active ingredients among these biostimulants. So this slide, you may have seen before. It's not mine, it's actually cutting it off. It's from AgroSen. It's a popular slide that's been out there, but I really like how it displays all the different components that make up biostimulants and why this is such a challenge. As a grower, it's a challenge to figure out what has benefit to your crops and what will truly work and what won't. As a regulator, trying to find out, okay, is this fall under our category? Is this more of a pesticide? You've got a lot of these products that kind of could go both ways. You can see on here, there's chitin, phosphites, even some of the seaweed and kelp extracts, among other things, the phytohormones that can cross lines into different territories. And then you even have some that qualify as fertilizers themselves. So the protein hydrolysates, whether that's animal or plant derived. Then you have the humic substances. So and bacteria, so beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizae, just an array of what falls under this umbrella. And it's a regulatory challenge. So to meet that challenge, there is a lot of current multi-organization involvement. Hopefully this shows up clear on your screen, but there's a lot of direction and input: USDA, FDA, EPA, and you have the Biopesticide Industry Alliance, APFCO, the group that I'm going to speak about more in just a bit. NASDA, that's the North American State Departments of Agriculture. The Fertilizer Institute, Humic Products Trade Association, APCO, so the pesticide control official group, Biostimulant Coalition, and lastly, American Seed Trade Association. So there's a lot of hands in the pie, a lot of opinions, but trying to find out what can we do to benefit growers, to make things clear and consistent, to make sure that we benefit the industry and the manufacturers of such products, that they can bring these products to market, and that they're able to show value for these very unique ingredients. One of the initial issues with biostimulants is that it is not defined in the United States. And years ago, groups came to APFCO, which is the Association of American Plant Food Control Officials, and they wanted APFCO to recognize biostimulants and define it and create a term. And there was a lot of resistance to it among the states, and with good reason, most of which we would want the actual ingredient to appear on a label and state what's the ingredient, what is working. Is it beneficial bacteria? Then call that out, identify that. Don't just rely on saying biostimulant, because that doesn't say anything. And it was viewed as just a marketing term and an empty term. And I know that there are many people in the industry that rubs the wrong way, but it's because it's inspecific. It's not specific enough. And we want to provide growers with information on what these products actually are. So since that time, there's been various proposed biostimulant definitions. There's one in the EU that they've actually had for a long time. But then in the United States, it led to a proposition in 2018 Farm Bill, followed by the 2019 USDA report to President and Congress, which there were definition as well as alternatives. And then ISO as well is in development and collaboration on a definition. The EPA presently does not intend to develop a separate definition from USDA. So there are still a lot of pending definitions out there, but the one that I chose to put on screen is, it's actually the second alternative definition in the USDA's report, and it seems to have gained the most traction. More groups seem to approve of this definition. It will undergo revisions, and actually it may have already. There may be a version that is even more updated than this. And I was told in August, they're still about a year and a half out, believe it or not, because ISO and other groups still wanted some input. So that would put us about a year out from now of that. But the current proposed definition is a plant biostimulant is a substance, microorganism, or mixtures thereof that when applied to seeds, plants, the rhizosphere, soils, or other growth media, act to support a plant's natural nutrition processes independently of the biostimulant nutrient content. The biostimulant thereby improves nutrient availability, uptake, or use efficiency, tolerance to abiotic stress, and consequent growth, development, quantity, or yield. That's quite the catch-all. And so not all typically do all of those things. A lot just do components of those things. So here's the bad news. No state fertilizer program in the United States or Canada currently permits the term biostimulant on labeling. And if you're out there and you're saying, well, wait, we've had it on our website for years, it's because we don't know about it. You are not permitted to do that currently. We do see it all the time. We see, usually not on labels itself, because the labels have to be registered through us or our staff see them in the field. But a lot of times we'll come across them on extensions of labeling, like marketing materials or websites or whatnot. So I do have to update this because I found out yesterday in a APCO meeting that there actually is one state in one circumstance that does allow biostimulant on labeling, and that's Washington. So they had stated if there are no claims that are clearly pesticidal claims and the biostimulant is not associated or not a known biocontrol, they will permit the term biostimulant on the labeling. But they are presently the only one. And I was in a seminar with 35 states yesterday, so it's still pretty accurate and recent information. So the Association of American Plant Food Control Officials, APCO, presently does not recognize the term biostimulant either. And that's where all these state regulators in Canada, Puerto Rico as well, come together and have established standards. And it is not there yet, but we are working towards it. Future slides, I'm going to show you how. So what do we want? Are these products not allowed? They are allowed. It's just that the term biostimulant can't be used. There are established standards for many of these ingredients and a path to distribution and sales. And usually what that path is identify what the specific biostimulant or biostimulants are in the product. So you can't have a product that just says, this is a great biostimulant. Our formula is proprietary, but boy, does it work. It's going to do this. It's going to make your fruit mature quicker. It's going to achieve a higher yield. You can't do that. However, if you identify this product is humic acid, and we're guaranteeing 3% humic acid in this product derived from leonardite. If you're saying this is beneficial bacteria and it's known to have effects in the soil and beneficial effects for plants, Bacillus subtilis, you can put it on a label. You can claim soluble silicon, plant protein hydrolysate. As long as it's known and recognized, you can have that product to market. You just can't claim the term biostimulant or replace these ingredients with the term biostimulant as a catch-all. So if the ingredient is presently recognized by APFCO, then it is typically, not always, but typically permitted to claim in most states. So the graphic here that I have is APFCO's official publication. I have a copy right here as well. And this has all of the terms and definitions that a lot of state regulators rely on as far as what are established standards with these type ingredients and fertilizer ingredients as well, and whether they or not they would permit them on the label. So if a biostimulant ingredient isn't recognized, then efficacy data may be required. So let's say you have a novel ingredient. You say we have a plant extract that we get from pine needles, and it does wonders on plants. You can see it. You can see the difference. We're going to ask, we're not familiar with this, provide efficacy data to show that it works. That's one of the steps. And if you can't provide data, it's not going to be allowed. You can't just say, well, you can see that it works. Here's a before and after picture. That's not going to cut it. It needs to be science. It needs to have the data to be able to use that particular ingredient. And then also a lot of groups or companies for ease may decide to get it formally defined in APFCO's official publication. So they will submit the term and the proposed definition, and then at the 2 annual meetings a year, lobby for why it needs to be there, the importance of why growers need access for this, and what this particular ingredient does for plants or for soils. So recognized ingredients should appear in a guaranteed analysis if they're nutritive components, or if they're non-nutritive in what's called a non-plant food ingredient statement. And what I mean by recognizing ingredient is just that it is known, that it is something that we're familiar with. Humic acid, very common, very well known. And so here's kind of an illustration, a snippet of a label, a fertilizing materials label, and how that may look. So if this biostimulant ingredient has nutrients, it's nutritive, has nutritive value in addition to the other components and benefits that it may have, you would list the nutritional benefit. So it would be, in this case, 3% nitrogen, and then you'd have it derived from plant protein hydrolysate. Now, if it's non-nutritive, in California, it would be this second part. So also contains non-plant food ingredients. And the example here is 2% humic acid derived from leonardite. This section right here is the one that is not uniform between states, but we're working on it. We actually made a lot of progress the last 2 days. Some states require a statement that says also contains beneficial substances and then the amount. Others require active and inert ingredients. Others require them to be called soil amending ingredients or plant amending ingredients. It's kind of all over the map, and that part is a mess, but we're going to work towards better uniformity on that. In California, though, this is the particular standard. So what's the other key point? If you've got a new novel ingredient, a new novel thing, my example of you got this plant extract made from pine needles, you have the data, so you think you can show this really works. Here's what the effects are. The next thing that states, and particularly APFCO, want to know is there a method for quantitative analysis of this biostimulant, right? So can we tell if you're making a claim on a label, can that be substantiated? If it's humic acid, absolutely. There are multiple types of tests out there, but if you're guaranteeing 5% humic acid, we can compare that against the analysis and determine if that is accurate or not. If you say 5% plant extract, what's the method? How are we going to be able to tell if you're selling plant extract at that quantity or it's just water? And that is, it's not always necessary, but it usually is. And that is a big component. So these products can also require dual registration, and these are the stickiest ones to deal with because they've got these dual benefits. So which bucket do they go into? Are they considered a fertilizing material as a biostimulant? Are they considered a pesticide because they're a biocontrol or a plant growth regulator? Even more difficult and a bigger challenge to this task is it's a lot more time consuming, expensive, and challenging to register something as a pesticide. And a lot of companies don't want something to be registered as a pesticide when they want, let's say, a hormonal benefit of it. So instead, they say, well, we'll register it as a fertilizing material, and we may allude to the fact that it has these hormones in it. And on a label, that wouldn't be allowed, but sometimes they try to do it on a marketing material or website. And then it just puts in a bad situation, because if you are making those plant growth regulator claims or hormone claims or any type of pesticidal claim, it would require dual registration. And I know that there's probably some experts out there that are watching this that have more experience on the pesticide end than I do. But hopefully this is accurately conveying most of it. So for both a fertilizing material and pesticide, these can be based on claims or composition. So if you are selling seaweed extract, it's highly dependent on what you're claiming, right? Are you claiming it as a source of potassium and it's more like a fertilizer? Or are you saying that this stimulates root growth, which might be hormonal leading to plant growth regulator? Or it could just be a composition itself. There may be a particular microbe, a particular beneficial bacteria that's only known to be a fungicide. And you want to ease your registration, so you're trying to, you lump it in with a bunch of other beneficial bacteria and say, okay, we're going to register this as a fertilizing material. We'd look at that and we'd say, no, this is solely a pesticidal beneficial bacteria, and that would require dual registration. And so the next bullet point, kind of what I touched on, but ingredients like some microbes commonly possess properties that may enhance nutrients in soils, but they also may act as a pesticide, whether that's a fungicide or something similar. And just because a product isn't registered with California Department of Food and Agriculture as a fertilizing material, it doesn't mean that it doesn't also require registration with the pesticide group, with California Department of Pesticide Regulation. And I want to give a shout out to Lynette Komar, one of the attorneys with Cal EPA and DPR, who provided, this is one of the cases that expressed this, that you're not okay if you have registration with us, with CDFA. That doesn't make it automatically exempt to say this is a fertilizer. They can't regulate it. If you're making claims or as composition as a pesticide, it will fall under that category too. So it would require both. Then we get into interesting things regarding the crossover. So a little over a year ago, I'm forgetting the original date, but it was in the springtime, I think 2019, EPA released a draft guidance for plant regulator products and claims that included plant biostimulants. And there was a lot of drive from the industry and also state regulators wanting clarity, because there are products out there that is, well, what is it? Should we allow seaweed extract as a fertilizing material? Should we allow other components? What's the trigger? We don't want to approve something as a fertilizing material only to have a couple weeks later it be quarantined by Department of Pesticide Regulation. So where is that line? So they created this draft guidance. They got untold number of comments from industry and other states, and they just released their updated version. This is a link to it. I'm sure that this presentation will be posted somewhere, but this is the link below that directly connects to it. And so they provided an updated guidance. And just in my personal opinion, it's much, much better, much clearer than before, and is really a step in the right direction. And they're a lot closer. It's not perfect. There's a couple of major flaws that I'm going to address and point out, but it's going to help industry and regulators understand what they can and can't do and what may need to be registered with both as a pesticide and a fertilizer or not. So some of the key components within this latest draft are that claims are a key consideration for the EPA in determining if a biostimulant is a pesticide. So they're very clear, though, to point out that it's claims-based, but not only claims-based. So if they've determined, for instance, okay, we're going to say chitin is only a pesticide. If they were to say that, and you don't make any pesticidal claims, they will still say you have to register that as a pesticide. So product composition obviously is another consideration. So products that are not considered pesticides: plant nutrients and trace elements, plant inoculants, soil amendments, and vitamin hormone products. They're exempt from FIFRA. A key thing also about vitamin hormone products that I want to point out is, for years there was this very popular product in the marketplace that said, we're exempt from regulation, we're a vitamin hormone product. But the reality with that is you only classify in that category if it's not for food crops, and they were marketing for food crops. So you're not considered a vitamin hormone product that's exempt from any type of registration if you are marketing for food crop use. So within this draft guidance, they have a series of tables. And they had this very controversial one in the original draft, which was table 4, which specifically identified you can't use these products, right? You can't use humic acid, foliar use humic acid. You can't use silicon. And some of it was vague. Is it all the time? Is it some of the time? A lot of criticism. So it was taken out. They revised the tables. And now table 1, A through C, gives examples of the products that are not considered pesticides and the claims. Or rather, Table 2 provides the generic non-pesticidal claims that are acceptable, that you can make all day long, and it would not be considered a pesticidal claim. However, plant regulator pesticidal claims, which are in Table 3, says accelerates or retards the rate of plant growth, accelerates or retards the rate of plant maturation, or otherwise alters the behavior of plants or products thereof, and doesn't fall within one of the excluded categories. So that those would then become pesticide products. And then Table 3 has these examples, and I pulled these 3 examples. There's a lot more than this, but I pulled these 3 examples because these are the ones that have serious flaws. And so there's another public comment period. CDFA is going to comment, as well as I'm sure plenty of others, but I'm just going to point out what requires the change. So they're stating here examples of a plant regulator claim. This would be fall as a pesticide. Enhances, promotes, stimulates fruit growth and development. Enhances, promotes, stimulates plant growth and development, and then enhances, promotes crop, fruit, produce color, development, quality, and shape. So one area that this may apply to is if you're selling the biostimulant on its own, okay? So let's say you are selling, we'll use the humic acid example again. If you used humic acid and you're saying, okay, it may enhance nutrient uptake for plant growth, something along those lines. If you aren't hitting on any of these pesticide ones in the claim, then it wouldn't be looked at. It would be a standalone, may enhance nutrient uptake. Let me limit to that. May enhance nutrient uptake. It wouldn't fall under this plant growth regulator, and it would be fine. But now, what if you included that humic acid with fertilizer, with nutrients? And now you have a claim that says this product enhances plant growth. It enhances fruit development. Is that going to be associated with the humic acid because it's in there, or seaweed extract or something? Seaweed extract is probably a better example. So if it says enhances plant growth, enhances root growth, is that going to be seen as, well, seaweed extract can't say that. But if the nutrients are in there, doesn't that account for it? So this is just what's unclear is if it's not the standalone product, how do these claims relate? And then the issue number 2 with it is it does contradict the proposed definition for biostimulant, as well as what we have in our state law for this category that biostimulant falls under. So in California, and I'm not going to read this whole text, but you heard me mention earlier that biostimulants would fall under this category, this product category called auxiliary soil and plant substances. And in part of that, it's defined by law as intended to improve product quality, other desirable characteristics of plants, and then down below, obviously, intended to improve, again, plant quality. And going back up to this, you say quality. That is a trigger. That's a trigger for a regulator claim. So now there's a conflict. We have something that with us would be registered and be totally fine as a fertilizing material, that now they would say potentially this is a plant regulator. And then same thing with the proposed definition, biostimulant definition. This is the slide I showed earlier, but now I highlighted this part of it, is the plant biostimulant thereby improves development and quality. So that would potentially be a USDA, ISO, maybe even APFCO defined definition. But in this one, you're saying that you can't discuss development and quality. So this is something that I know we'll be commenting on because we just want clarity. We want it to be clear. And they've done a great job so far addressing a lot of the comments. And it's a much cleaner version than previously, but there's still some work to be done. I think I still have a few minutes before the Q&A portion. We're almost to the conclusion. But I'd mentioned that previous table 4 with the examples is removed, but now it still does include specific examples, providing a little bit more clarity. So corn gluten meal would not be permitted. It would be considered a pesticide. Humic acid, and this is a big one for us, humic acid foliar use would not be permitted, or it would be, you'd have to register it as a pesticide. And we know in our program, there's hundreds and maybe even 1,000 custom blends that are made out there, particularly for the nut growers and everything else that is foliar applied on almost every batch of fertilizer that is going out presently. So what is that going to mean? Who's going to enforce that? Is that going to be enforced of you can no longer do this practice? That's going to be a challenge. And then seaweed extract would be permitted and may require registration as a pesticide depending upon the claims. So regulatory approaches for products that have multiple plant regulator and non-plant regulator modes of action. So the seaweed extract is one of these products. Same thing for humic acid. If it can be demonstrated that a particular product has the activity claims on the product label and does not make any plant regulator claims on the label, then it may be excluded from FIFRA regulation. So there's some leeway, there's flexibility there. The problem is if you've gone to market with a label, with let's say a fertilizing material label, and you're in the marketplace and it was registered by us, some of that clarity might not come through till later. If somebody says, hey, you can't say that this enhances or stimulates root development. And so that is still problematic for some of these ingredients. So how, as a whole throughout the US, how is this now being tackled? I already told you that we don't recognize biostimulants, the term biostimulant, although we recognize the ingredients. So recently, we did establish a biostimulant committee, and it's so popular. It's our biggest committee. I think we've got like 100 people signed up or something for biostimulant committee, and it's chaired by myself and Eddie Simons out of WSDA out of Washington. And the inaugural meeting of it was at the summer annual in August, and the next one we have coming up is our winter annual in February. Usually they're different parts of the country, but obviously due to the pandemic, last one was virtual and this one will be virtual. But in this committee, we've now been charged with coming up with these components that you're seeing below is a term and definition. And we've already pretty much decided, okay, we're going to wait and see what is the one developed by the USDA. And we want to stick to uniformity, hopefully within that, as long as something doesn't conflict. Another one is what's called a model bill. So creation of something that appears in, this official publication that a company can use that says, okay, or a state can reference rather, saying if something is labeled this way, if a biostimulant is promoted this particular way, it's fine, it's acceptable. So a model that many states can look after. And so that's a part that's being developed. Uniform labeling. So I told you that it was kind of a mess with that non-plant food ingredient labeling and beneficial substance labeling. So we're blowing the whole thing up, and we're going to say, how do we want to do it? What's the ideal? And I think we're much closer than we've ever been before, but there's going to be a lot of pain and headaches. A lot of states, maybe even including California, we're going to have to change our regulations. Some states may even have to change the law in order to have uniformity, to have a label work for all states. we're going to establish efficacy data guidelines. We already have some pretty strong ones, but the biostimulant industry wanted ones that were more specific to them because they felt that the existing ones weren't targeted to them that well. And then the last is lab methods, and that's done actually through our lab services committee of, new and emerging methods, or even for new and emerging ingredients, how those should be tested. So I think I'm pretty close on the time there. So that's my presentation, and hopefully you guys in the chat have had some questions. If not, you can type them in now, and we will I'll fire away and answer as best I can with those.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick, for your fresh, informative presentation. So, all right, Nick, I think you're ready for questions. So I'll read the questions for you. We had a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Okay, so the first question is, so it means a compost tea or mycorrhizae will be considered a biostimulant under the definition?
A compost tea with microbes. So again,
mycorrhizae.
Oh, with mycorrhizae. Okay, yeah. So the key is claims, right? So if you are selling a compost tea and you're not talking about the mycorrhizae that's in the product, at that point it's a soil amendment because you're not making claims. But once you start saying, yes, there's mycorrhizae, then it does become this biostimulant. We would consider it this auxiliary soil and plant substance, and you would end up including the guarantee for that. So you would identify what the mycorrhizae is, and we actually have 4 requirements. So you'd have to have the species, you'd have to have the number of colony forming units, and then expiration date and storage conditions on that particular product. But that would be regulated, yes, by my program.
Thank you. So the next question is, what were the results of the Caltech Ag DPR case?
So that's a good question, and I can't answer that one. That was, and if others can, if Lynette could speak up, I'm sure she would chime in on that. I don't know, because I got that reference as well as what's on screen now, the ombudsman information from Lynette. So unfortunately, I couldn't tell you that point. Just that, yes, you have to register dual use products with pesticide department as well as us. That I guess was the outcome.
Okay. Next question is, isn't copper and the zinc considered quote trace, which is the micronutrient?
Yes. So what's interesting is, there are micronutrients too that have dual use, right? You can have copper, that is a fungicide, and it's also micronutrient. So again, it's based on claims. What are you claiming? So if you're claiming a pesticide, it would go over there. But if you're saying we have a product and it has 0.5% copper, 0.5% zinc, and here's what it's going to do for your plant, correct deficiencies in order to grow better, that would be us. Yeah, you would register that product. Not a biostimulant. It wouldn't be considered a biostimulant. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so there's just one comment here. So Caltech was fined $784,000.
Wow.
All right. So for the next question. So although no official recognition on biostimulant labeling, but we see a lot of alternative terms like biofertilizer, inoculants, or amendments. It seems like there's no clear boundary. So on the regulatory aspect, how do you differentiate?
That's a great question. Yeah, and there's so many creative ways. I mean, the world is full of marketers, right? So you have a lot of crazy claims that, well, if we can't say biostimulant, let's put out this. And so what we try to do for our standards, again, is consistency. So up in Sacramento, we've got a number of environmental scientists that review labels and data, and they have meetings every week to establish these standards where it is, okay, they're calling this a a biocatalyst, is that something that we can permit? And the most common answer for that is you're going to have to provide an explanation for what you mean by biocatalyst and some type of formal acknowledgement of what a biocatalyst is by some recognized entity. And then you may be allowed to put it on there. But if not, you know, we're not shy about telling companies they got to take it off.
Great. Next question is, are there any specific strategies, tactics, or help for the product users now when buying a biostimulant, when these new or updated regulations come out?
Another great question. So, you know, from a consumer or grower's point of view, you know, the protections really are evaluating the data, right? Of, you know, you're being sold a product. Sometimes it would be what's on a label, but if it's, you know, if you're ag, you're probably going to be given some additional material as well, is to look at the actual data of what this substance is going to do. If you're unfamiliar with it, you know, if you're familiar with, you know, humic acid and you say, okay, this is going to enhance nutrient uptake, then, you know, you can take it at face value. One thing my program does not do is we don't say this product works or this product works better than another. All we do is we validate that the analysis on a label, it meets its guarantees. So if you're buying a product that, let's say, is 10% humic acid, well, we analyze it. You know, we sample 1,500 times a year, 1,500 products, and we'll make sure that it's at 10%. So you're getting what you paid for. But we can't tell you that that 10% product works better than a 5% one that's by a competitor. But we do evaluate all those, whether it's fertilizer or everything else. And that's the importance of having a percentage, and why somebody just can't say it's 10% biostimulant. What are we going to analyze? We can't make a determination on the quality that you're buying if we can't test for it.
Okay, thanks. The next question, so is there any specific key information that required to be listed on the label? For example, a mycorrhizae product should be listed that brassica vegetables may not form association, or legume crops versus the rhizobium.
So there are specific requirements, but very few for fertilizer. Usually it's just standard labeling requirements, you know, such as product name, a guaranteed analysis, what's called a derivation statement, which is the ingredients, the quantity of the product. And I believe that question, you know, is more towards, you know, statements on a label if you're selling something. The only two that I can think of off the top of my head is we have, for products that have an excessive amount of boron or molybdenum, it has to have a couple of caution statements, because one of them can, the boron can damage plants if it's too high, and molybdenum can kill ruminant animals. So those are the only real requirements. But one of the things you can do if you, let's say if you are trying to get a product to market, you can email me. We have, not during the pandemic, but every other non-pandemic year, we have an outreach event where it's a one-day event where we go over all these things, where it is, here's what's required on a label, here's how you register it, here's what you do, and all sorts of different things in the event. And we usually do that in the fall every year. Excuse me. So that may be beneficial if you're looking to bring a product to market and find out. And then if you aren't going to attend in person, we do have like labeling guides, and those are available on our website as well.
Thank you. I think here we have a last question. Is hopefully will the testimonial report be required when labeling and promoting a product? Would that be possible?
Could you say that one more time?
Hopefully the testimonial report is required when labeling or promoting a product in the future. Is that,
so
is that possible?
As far as the tests are concerned, it depends, but usually that's the case, that they have to submit data with the product. And it can vary depending on what the product is. So if a product has a lot of natural mined minerals, will require heavy metals analysis too. If you are an organic product that, say, is derived from compost teas or manures, we require pathogen analysis report that there's no pathogens in it. And then we do require to substantiate claims on a label, but not every time, not for renewals, unless we've found issues. Because again, we're sampling these products all the time. So it sometimes is a bit redundant if we required somebody to submit analysis to all the time when we're analyzing it ourselves.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have. So I saw in the chat box and talking about the link for the survey. I think the link is I saw it's not included in the chat box, but it's included in the slide.
Oh, you can go back to the other slide.
Let me just go back to the slide. Okay, so thank you everyone for your participation for today's webinar, and thanks Nick for giving this excellent talk and to spend the time with the questions.
Thanks everybody, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.